We're back to the Neil Haley Show, and I'm excited to welcome my co-host, celebrity author, David Hollenbach. David, how are you? And I know you're excited about our guest today.
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me again.
Absolutely. Our guest is three-time Latin Grammy Canadian winner, BenAthony Lavoz. Ben,
Hey.
how are you, BenAthony? Thanks for coming on.
I'm doing great. It's been it's been a very busy week, but that's to be expected before any album release. So just the way it goes.
So let's talk about, did you always want to be a musician? Was that something growing up you wanted to be a performer?
So music's just always followed me. I mean, anything that I've ever done, I've done it to my greatest capacity. But no matter how good the opportunity was, music just always found a way to just, poke there. And then, I had to give in. I had to give in. And so it's more of a calling than anything. And I think with this album, it's more also of a message. And it's very important here in Canada. It's a very important message here in Canada for the Latino culture. So it's a calling.
Absolutely. Go ahead, David. Any questions, you just start asking BenAthony.
Yeah, I think the name of the album is pretty cool, and if we could dig into that, like where that comes from, and forgive me if I butcher this, aunque me mate.
Yeah, aunque me mate, you got it perfect. It means even if it kills me. I've been in this game since I was a teenager, and at that point, reggaeton, which is now something that we consider pop, we hear it through our radio stations. It wasn't like that. It's a very street genre, and from there, when I got into it, it evolved. It evolved into something like we know today, popular. But it was a very nasty scene, to say the least, especially here in Canada. Lots of street, negative stuff. Not to get too much into it, but now we're starting to see with the popularity of this music, we see once again the Canadian music industry backwards, right? So what's the issue here is that we have the Junos playing in their halftime, between commercial segments, Shakira, Bad Bunny, J Balvin, all the Spanish music. Or we have some English artists that are having the reggaeton beat behind them. They're getting nominated, but the actual Canadian Latin artists are being left out. So what's gonna go on here? I gotta push, and I gotta put this music higher, and I'm gonna make sure that we start getting the recognition that's deserved, and that's getting a Latin category here in Canada, the Junos. Everything else I've touched, and that's just the last frontier that I'm ready to tackle, even if it kills me, aunque me mate.
Is your music reggaeton music, BenAthony?
It was before, and going into this album, I shied away from it for two reasons. One, reggaeton is sold out. Now they're moving more into the trap, which is even more urban. It's having those negative messages being pursued and given out to the public. I decided to go to the traditional roots. Every single one of these songs has been composed by me and include live musician bands. Do they still have the timing of the urban artists? Yes, they do, which is something very, very unique. But not only does it challenge what the Canadian music industry is doing, it also challenges the Latin music that's being produced in Latin America and the United States, where I'm shying away from what's urban, and I'm giving the messages, and I'm also bringing the power back to the artists. I'm here telling you my story with my musicians, my compositions, and my arrangements. So it's a pretty heavy project, and it's shied away from reggaeton. Reggaeton's in a computer. Everything's in the screen. This is not. This is in studio. This is live. This is my life. This is my creation. This is for you guys.
So what is your favorite song off of this album? And then for those listening that this is their introduction to BenAthony, what's a prior song that would be a good introduction to your sound?
You see, this album, and I kid you not, I've never been one for marketing, and I never will be one for marketing, because at the end of the day, I'm giving all my energy into the creation of these songs. So every song to me is like a baby, and I can't say one's better than the other. And I've been so eclectic, and I've been, doing music in reggaeton. I've done rap. I've done cumbia. I've done some traditional stuff. I can't tell you that there is a song, Mercedes. There's a song that's going to be the best, but I will tell you that if you take the time to listen to this album in its entirety, you are going to hear what is a musical. It's a musical composition in its entirety. You'll hear what the what's maintains the same in this album. and it's out of this world. It's something that's never been done, and I know maybe a lot of artists say that, but I can guarantee you in the Latin music, this is something you've never heard, and there's not one that's my favorite. They're all my favorite. They all have my heart, and I've tooth and nail fought to make sure that they all get produced properly.
And
And
they're
you
and then and what based on not being reggaeton, not being some of the other stuff you have, what will be the play on this? I know now because you can tell us how music works nowadays. Like, where would a lot of airplay you're going to get this music once it's out? Where would it be?
Well, so I've gone all routes in marketing. I brought in a couple of key players. Let's see what Sasha Stoltz can bring. You know, she's known. She's known here in Toronto in a different scene. I have some of the key players in Toronto that are part of the Latin community, but I want them to strive a little higher. I think that because I've never really been one for marketing, and if I've got a lot of hits in Europe and a lot of recognition in Latin America, and because this project is geared toward Canada, I can't really tell you. But what I do want, and I hope what I will continue to do with this project, is that it hears on the right ears, and those are the key players here in the Canadian music industry. They need to recognize that this project is massive, and it's something that I believe is historic in our whole timeline of music industry in Canada. It's something that's going to change it, and it needs to fall in the right ears. I'm not about streaming platform. I'm not about that stuff, but it needs to hear on the proper ears of the people in the music industry, and they need to make a change. It's time for Latin music, Canadian Latin music artists to be recognized, and this is going to do it.
One of the things that I read is that on this album, this is you use this to promote some more of the traditional methods of composing Latin music. What does that mean to you?
Well, that's what I was telling you about the reggaeton and the trap. I mean, for me, it's sure when reggaeton started, it had its melodies and it stayed true to the traditional ways of making music, which one of them is that most Latino music isn't on the fours and like 1, 2, 3, 4. We actually play on something that's called the clave. It's like it's what's known as Afro beats to most North Americans, especially here in Canada. That's a clave. It comes from Africa, so most of our music is composed on that. Now, what's cool about the clave? It's Afro beats. That's actually what they use for salsa music. Now, the Latinos were never lazy with it. And sometimes you don't even hear the clave. It's silent. It's on all the other instruments around. And now what I find in today's music, especially reggaeton and the trap that's coming out, it basically just sounds like the urban music that's being spewed out on, you know, your radio stations. And they just basically translate into Spanish. There's nothing over the edge creative to it. And there's no authenticity to it. So what I've done is I've created I've included real life musicians, and I've put the timings, especially with the music, onto the clave, and it just changes everything. That's what it means to be traditional. Also, when it comes to the meaning of the song, right? I'm not trying to sound like nobody. I'm not trying to say what, you know, the countless producers have told me I need to sound like, especially those in Canada that are just dying to sound like the next Bad Bunny coming out of Puerto Rico or, you know, New York. This is my story. These are my feelings. This is my transmission from the higher up. And this is the way the Latin music is made. It comes from the artist, the singer, and then it's up to the musicians to compose that. And on different timings, always switching it up. If you listen to a song that's so popular now, you have what, max four changes of the song, if you're lucky. But some of my songs are having like 8 changes in there, and that's what keeps things interesting. And that's what I mean by traditional ways. It's shying away from the laziness and creating something out of the screen. You know, something that's real life. Music is life.
So my question to you then is that you probably the only one that could do this, right? Having 3 Grammys gives you some street cred to do something like this and to really try to put Latin music on the map in Canada. That's what your goal is. So basically you can finally do this because of who you are, right? To be the person to do it.
I'm glad, you know, coming down here, shooting down to come to this interview. I was just thinking that because I was like, you know, interview after interview, I'm saying the same thing, but it dawned on me and I was like, is it maybe that I'm getting older and I'm like, oh, the new music isn't quite like when I was your age, you know, but it's not that. It's literally that basically I'm sticking true to the roots. And you're right, my past with street creds allows me the opportunity to have the right ears and a new generation that's prevalent listen to me and say, hey, this is relevant, but it still has that sound. Like you listen to a Mark Anthony, right? You're getting a salsa, you know, there's no denying that. But you're right, with my past, it puts me in a unique position that is going to change the whole Latin music industry. And I'm going to be proud to say that it comes out of Canada. I think it's one of the final frontiers that Latin music has not, and the Latin culture for that matter, hasn't executed. And it's weird with the Latin culture. If you see it, you know, you go to Jack Astor's, you order, you see there's so much Latin influence in our food and our songs and our daily lives, but it's not adopted as our Latin culture. So it's time that we reclaim what's ours. I mean, this is a multicultural country, and every culture has a right to what it does to create a beautiful multicultural country, and ours is music.
Definitely, with the different people that have blown up in Canada, right? That this is the opportunity, right?
Well, you know, you have, you know, you have different cultures thriving in different things, the housing market, and you know, opening different stores and the condos, construction. And you know, in the States, you see Latinos are hard workers. You know, we don't mind getting our hands dirty, but what keeps us motivated is our music. And I feel that my people aren't having that representation here from somebody that's from Canada that can say, hey, man, it's worth staying here in Canada. There's life here, and we live that through our music. It's our way of communication. It's our way of feeling. It's our way of maintaining happy and not taking life so serious.
Good, David.
Nice. No, I'm still stuck on the statement about the Latin influence on the food there in Canada. Because the only thing that comes to my mind with Canadian food is like gravy on French fries, you know?
Yeah, French fries. Well, you know, you go to Jack Astor. I mean, any fast food place you go, you're gonna have your quesadillas. You know, you're gonna have your chipotle sauce. You're gonna have your wraps, tortillas. You know, your tacos, and you know, it just boggles the mind that it's not like we don't have enough Mexican restaurants, in my opinion, here, or Latino restaurants, or if they are, they're hidden. Yet, you know. Our food is there. Our culture is here. If you cross the border right to the States, it's a whole different world. And I don't want to sound like an invasive species, but you know, I think there's a lot of good things that our culture can bring and kind of balance a lot of what's going on in our country city.
I have a friend of mine who owns a business in Canada, and he talks about flat out how hard it is even to go across the border to the US still, even because of COVID, which is crazy. So you basically are like on an island, even though Canada's not an island. You know what I mean? You're on an island, and it's kind of history back to Latin America being on an island, right? Exactly. Now you are on an island, Canada. The Latinos in Canada and Latinx, it's just crazy. Now, what do you think is why reggaeton, even though you're saying now where it's going, it went mainstream? What do you think led reggaeton to mainstream? Who did it? Who kind of put that out there? Because, you know, it's all about a movement.
It's all numbers, right? It's all numbers. And, you know, you're selling enough, you know, you're going to have these big corporations, these labels, they're going to pay it out just to have the rights to that sort of music to flood the airwaves and to have the royalties and have the rights to that. And these artists obviously are going to sell. You know, like I said, this was street music. So however big these contracts were is a blessing. It's what ultimately we work for, right? And then it's the responsibility of the new artists to keep things different, relevant. You know, too many people copying, and not enough of these artists that are you know, pushing the boundaries. So what happened was the numbers of Latin music just soared. The reggaeton just soared, and it was just mainstream. So now, unfortunately, you hear reggaeton, and it's a lot of they're just old pop songs or rap songs that they kind of do. They do in a Spanish twist, like Informer. You know, they took a friend of mine here in Toronto, made it really, really big with Daddy Yankee, toured the world doing that. But that's what it is, just the numbers. And once you get up there, the labels are hungry for it, and they'll cut your distribution deals, whatnot, a tour deal. They push you, you make money, and that just kind of, I think when a genre sells out, it actually kind of kills it. It's like the end, right? And now we're on to trap, which is too urban, so it's time to kick things back into.
And trap's a mixture of reggaeton and what else is the mixture of?
Oh, no, trap is like a hip hop thing. That's evolution from rap, hip hop. That's
What
the
about EDM? Is EDM part of that too?
EDM is more house music, much more stuff you hear in clubs. Trap is your Tory Lanes, your Travis Scotts, your I don't know. I guess Drake would touch on it, but it's just more of a street. And now they're even onto drill, which is really it's really hard. It's a UK drill, but that's not Latin. It's not Latin. They just now after reggaeton, they're kind of just jumping on the bandwagon. They're like, oh, okay, might as well go into trap. Doesn't sound bad. So that's what Bad Bunny does. He's done very well with it, but it's starting to get a little boring.
Do you think what did Bad Bunny do to become a big star to this level now with WWE and everything? And
Yes.
who do you think made his brand blow up?
Well, so that was the thing, that he was the answer to reggaeton selling out. He kept it hard in the beginning, believe it or not. Like his music was pretty, it promoted street stuff, right? And so once reggaeton sold out, your Daddy Yankees, which did Gasolina, your Whiskey and Dales, they're all mainstream. They're sellouts, not in a bad way. I'm not judging. He was the answer for the younger generation to kind of hop on and feel something, strength. It's really important in the Latin culture that they feel strong. It's a machismo thing, we haven't killed that off yet in our culture.
Okay. All right, David, you have one more question for BenAnthony before we let him go.
Yeah, so your album is dropping on the 23rd. Do you see a tour? Are you going to be touring this album around the world?
Yeah, the 23rd is out. I've got all the funding. The event is free for those who want to come. I'll be watching, and it's going to be a revival. I was lucky enough to get the space. We have a lot of key players of the Latin industry there. It drops there, and as soon as it drops, the next morning I'm off to San Francisco. And I start a whole tour. I go from there, and then I have to go to New York, Medellin, all Latin America. They consume me so well. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be able to maintain myself. But I was telling the boss, which I was on an interview earlier today. It's so weird. I go over there. No, I start here, and it's like, hey, I want to go on, let's just say, breakfast television. See it every morning, and everybody, the publicists, and like, you're not big enough. You can't get there. It's the big roundabout. You got to go this way. Okay, whatever. But as soon as I cross that border or go into my countries, I'm on the biggest television networks. I'm on the biggest stages. They love and absorb me, and it's not a big deal. And there's no politics to it. There's no, that we call it playero. But anyways, it's so much smoother running, and there's so much more to gain. But I'm now determined, and I'm stubborn. I'm gonna get our music here in Canada, and hopefully the way that we conduct ourselves can have an influence in the Canadian music industry. It's an entire, sometimes it's like, well, who's running this show? It's just like a whole bunch of I don't know.
It's all that, but it's interesting you said this. You go to another country, you're a rock star, which me saying in that way, but you're in this like huge star. Why don't you want to stay in those countries? Is it more that your thought process is that you want to become that type of star all over the world? Is that a dream of yours, or is that something that you would love to happen, to get to that level, or especially your way, or you are happy with the stardom, the success you've already had?
Well, let me tell you, I was, if it wasn't for the pandemic, it's a curse and a blessing, right? Everyone has their story about it, but I was on my way out. You're right. I was exactly what you just said. Why be here? Getting stuck here, and I try to get out very many ways. I even try to see if I can get a yacht to get out. It was crazy stuff. Anyways, getting stuck here, I really realized the need for this market to explode here for various reasons, and then just being told no and being judged in different ways, nothing too harsh, but being judged as in, I felt being myself, Latin, fun, flair, everyone's like, no, you have to do this, you have to be like this. If you do that, you're never gonna make it. Or 2 years of that, I was like, you know what? At this point, I'm gonna make it a point. And I'm here, and I see that Canada needs that flair, and it needs a Latino artist to call their own. And hopefully, we can kind of just spicing things up.
I think you can. If you're motivated to do it, you're going to be able to do it. Best place to find info on you, BenAnthony. Where can they go?
BenAthony Lavoz. It's all uniform everywhere. Go check it out, and you won't be disappointed with this album. Be part of the movement. The time is now. it's very seldom that people can be part of something that's about to explode like this big, right?
I know it is. If you believe it, you can achieve it. And you've already achieved so much, you'll continue to achieve. Thanks again for taking the time, man.
No problem.
You're listening and
Thank you,
watching the
Ben.
Neil Haley Show. We'll be back in just a moment.